reason I came up with Eldorado was I started looking at books written by Edgar Allan Poe and looking at stories by Edgar Allan Poe. And I just finished a screenplay on another Edgar Allan Poe poem called The Raven. And I came across Eldorado and I was reading it and I thought that would be a good introduction for the film, this mythical town or this mythical place. And I started jotting down some ideas, and before I knew it, these ideas became 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, and it started to take on a life of its own.
But I believe that if you wish hard enough, your dreams could come true at Eldorado. Fact! Some say Eldorado was discovered by a pirate. A rogue of the sea. Captain Jake was his name.
I then, one night, was watching a rerun of the Blues Brothers, and I started to fuse the two together. And suddenly, I thought, wouldn't this be good as an ensemble piece? So you'd have lots of different characters interwoven, trying to get to this town of Eldorado, this mythical place. And it started off that the two brothers were a small part of the film. They were only in the background. And then it became bigger and bigger, and the two brothers became the leads of it.
Anyone at home? No, I said anyone at home.
Maybe we should go.
Go where, Stanley? We're lost, unless you know the way to Eldorado.
No.
Stanley, if you don't know, and I don't know, maybe we should ask someone who does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It became a journey. It's a bit like Joseph Campbell's books, mythology books, where they're talking about the hero with 1,000 faces, and going from one adventure into an next, going from one catastrophe into an next. But I wanted to make it funny and slapstick. It's something I'd never done before, was a comedy film, and I wanted to do something which was different.
Don't even think about it, Stanley.
Well, it's another fine mess.
There are 2 threads, really. You've got Daryl Hannah's character, which ties the poetic side of it. She is the angel that has come down from heaven, and basically she has got David Carradine, who is supposed to be God, if you like, the spirit, and then you've got Peter O'Toole, which is the narrator. It's a bit like Charles Gray from the Rocky Horror Show. So you've got 2 types of threads of strand of people telling you the story. I find Edgar Allan Poe of interest because of his stories are quite dark, macabre, and his background I quite like, things he writes about. I've liked his work for a long time. Not only his, but people like Conan Doyle, people like H.P. Lovecraft, and then you go, the classics such as Shakespeare, and then you've got Brecht, and then you've got other people. But to try and weave a film around their work is, I think, can be interesting, especially if it's poetry, because usually you don't see much poetry in movies nowadays. And I just thought that having someone like Daryl Hannah recite this poetry while the film is going on, and while it's slapstick, it's a bit like a comedy art movie in a way, and I think it will give it a bit more, instead of being thin, a bit more meat to it.
A dark, unfathomed tide of interminable pride, a mystery and a dream should my early life seem. I say that dream was fraught with a wild and waking thought of beings that have been, which my spirit hath not seen. Had I let them pass me by with a dreaming eye? Let none of earth inherit that vision of my spirit. Those thoughts I will control as a spell upon his soul. For that bright hope at last in that light time hath passed, and my worldly rest hath gone with a slight sigh as it passed on. I care not though it perish, with a thought I then did cherish.
We hired David just before he died, unfortunately, and what happened was he was due to come over in July to film his scenes. And I was in a position of, do we scrap the idea of David? Do we get somebody else? His agent suggested that he has just filmed a movie, that we could ask them if they could help us, and that's what I did. And I was able to get that footage and rework it and make him into a CGI character, which is what you see in the film. Hasn't been done for over 40 years. The last people to do this was Hammer Films. What we've got at this studio, which is called Higher Nampion Film Studios, we have 5 stages. We have editing rooms, sound rooms, and we have lights, cameras, all these different things. We bring in various crew, we bring in various actors. The DOP that we had was someone called Francois Copy, who was quite interesting to work with. This was the biggest film that he had ever worked on, and we had to get in certain lights for him because we had to recreate the lighting of the desert because it's supposed to be Nevada, it's supposed to be Death Valley. I always use also a camera operator called Selena Jennings, who I use on all my films because she has a certain style and she works well with me and she understands what I'm after. There wasn't anything like it being made at the time, and it reminded me of the Rocky Horror Show, and it reminded me a bit of the Blues Brothers, and I just thought, what are we making in the UK but period pieces and gangster films? And I thought this could be different.
Well, it's been a wonderful experience being involved in the making of the Eldorado 3D film. It's been directed by Richard Driscoll, who's a fascinating character. I mean, he's actually got his own film studio down in Redruth in Cornwall, and I so much admire his efforts in this because there's not many people making their own feature films in the UK at the moment, especially in 3D and especially using Hollywood actors. So it's been a fascinating experience for me. We filmed in Hollywood and Las Vegas, Nevada desert, and of course in the studio sets in Cornwall. So I'm very much looking forward to the finished film.
I play the part of the mayor of this weird, funny, odd town of Eldorado. And he seems an affable sort of guy at first, but he's not as affable as the film progresses. He turns quite nasty, quite black. Funny, because he wears all white. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the 200th anniversary of our little town. So tonight we shall celebrate at Eldorado's own music hall with our special guests, live from California, the Soggy Bottom Boys and their tribute act. I had worked out the way I thought he should be played, and Richard seemed to agree. I did my homework on him and made him out to be this rather loud, bit pompous, nice on the surface. As far as Eldorado goes, he's nice, but nobody in Eldorado is very nice, and perhaps he is the sort of person who would be horrified if you said to him, you're a baddie. He would say, oh no, I'm not, I'm just like everybody else, only better. You boys all ready for the feast?
Sure am, man. Sure am.
Very nice, Tommy. What you got there? Don't hide it, don't hide it.
There's nipples on her. I like to suck on her teeth now and then.
Very tasty. Very tasty. Isn't that right, Lamas? But how do you know they're female?
They're the ones without the hairs attached, can't you tell?
Well said, Tommy. Very well said. I do like the taste of shortbreads. You can't beat the sound of that plop in your mouth when you're biting that ball. Delicious. Eh, Limas? The accent I went for was sort of southern, because that seemed to be the Wild West cowboy type, the place that they would live in. I didn't really style it on anyone. possible thoughts of Orson Welles in The Long Hot Summer. But that's a long time ago, and not many people would remember that. But he did that sort of thing. And again, he did it in Touch of Evil. So yes, he would be the only person that I would have had thoughts on.
Hey, Soggy Bottom boys are escaping.
Escaping? God damn it, I want them dead. Real dead. We gotta go kill those sons of bitches. Now. I like doing films and television. I've done a lot of stage, and I feel I've served my apprenticeship on the stage, in Fringe and in bigger shows and vaguely touring, and I enjoy the longevity of films, because I hate on the stage come a Saturday night when it usually ends. You see the set being torn down and the props all being destroyed and everybody going away promising to love each other forever and never seeing anybody else again ever. But the whole thing is finished, gone, no records, over. And even the old actors now, they're known by their film parts, because they might have done better stage parts. I mean, the old classical and well-known people, but it's their films that stand. So what I like about film and television is the longevity. For tonight the clown will rise and blood will flow in the streets of Eldorado.
When you're poor, the future is always somewhere else. Be it Nirvana, heaven, or Eldorado.
Join Stan and Ollie, the Jews Brothers, on a musical comedic journey.
That's it! I think I found the ideal gig for both of you. They need a stripper and a band.
But what they don't know is how painful this trip will be.
Mr. Bickleford back there?
A crooked cop.
Mr. Roy's out back, detective. Sure do like that shirt.
With $1 million stolen dollars.
See something funny laughing, boy. So how do you know which one is female?
They're on a mission to a strange and horrifying world. Over the mountains and through the valley of the shadow, you will find Eldorado.